Greetings. Am I exhibiting a lack of open-mindedness, or is my spouse perhaps displaying excessive naivety? A dispute has arisen between my husband and me, leaving me emotionally drained. My name is Alice, and I find myself in my 30s. My husband, Martin, and I share the responsibility of raising our daughter, Mia, who is on the verge of entering the 3rd grade. Our familial unit, previously including my retired father, now numbers 3, as my father has embarked on a 2-year overseas assignment offered by a certain company. The discord originated with the prospect of accommodating my nephew, Philip, who is set to commence his college education. Given our proximity to his chosen institution, Martin was approached with a request for Philip to reside with us during his academic pursuits. The proposition entails his stay until he achieves financial independence through part-time employment, yet specifics regarding the required savings or timeframe remain elusive. Personally, I harbored reservations about sharing living quarters with a young man whom I encounter primarily during extended family vacations. My home-based professional responsibilities further diminish my enthusiasm for the notion. Upon voicing my concerns to Martin, his response was unforeseeably defensive. His retort questioned my lack of trust in Philip, leading to an impasse where neither party was willing to yield. Initial discussions involving Martin, Thomas's wife, and Philip himself had exhibited unanimous support for the idea. Philip explicitly expressed his desire to be under our care. Martin, however, appeared oblivious to the underlying complexities, dismissing any apprehensions about Mia and regarding the situation with unwarranted optimism. Our disagreement persists, with no resolution in sight. As the proprietor of the house registered under my name, I proposed deferring the decision until my father's return, urging a collective discussion. Martin, however, resisted this proposition, asserting that involving my father was unnecessary and advocating for a swift resolution over the phone. This stance, coupled with his encouragement for Philip's independence, raised doubts in my mind regarding the sincerity of Martin's intentions. The house, though aged, offers ample space, leading me to suspect clandestine discussions between Martin and my in-laws, with Martin striving to maintain a favorable impression on Thomas. Communicating via text during work hours, Martin suggested that the decision could be made without involving my father, emphasizing the surplus of rooms available. Despite my reservations, Martin remained steadfast in his opinion, refusing to budge until a decision was reached, thereby exacerbating the existing deadlock. It is disconcerting to contemplate anyone's displeasure upon discovering that their relatives have been relocated to their residence without consent, especially when they are not present. Martin, however, exhibits a noticeable lack of comprehension. When I inquired about the possibility of our relatives residing rent-free simply due to familial ties, he asserted that they were willing to remit $200, deeming it sufficient for one person. The basis for the in-laws' notion of adequacy remains unclear, as I am convinced that this amount is inadequate by any reasonable standard. The question arises, does $200 cover only monthly groceries? I limit the absence of prior consultation between Martin, Thomas, and me. If only they had sought my input earlier, I could have engaged in a thorough discussion with my father. However, I suspect a reluctance to consult him in advance, perhaps due to his benevolent yet stubborn nature, leading them to anticipate certain conditions. My apprehensions deepen as I entertain the thought that clandestine machinations have been underway since they learned of my father's overseas assignment. Seeking counsel, I decided to confide in a trusted confidant, my close friend Rosalie, a relationship spanning back to our middle school years. Recognizing the gravity of my situation, Rosalie promptly adjusted her schedule and suggested a private setting to ensure our conversation remained confidential. It felt serendipitous as we hadn't caught up in a while. Initially engaging in light conversation, we eventually delved into the heart of the matter. I recounted the entire narrative to Rosalie, detailing Philip's request to move in while pursuing college, with vague assurances of financial independence. Martin, seemingly receptive, deferred the decision to me. Complicating matters, our residence is registered in my father's name, and he is currently overseas, adamantly refusing to engage in any discussion on the subject. In addition to these complexities, I have the presence of my daughter Mia at home, and the prospect of accommodating a male relative who is essentially a stranger leaves me uneasy. Given that the house is registered under Dad's name, securing his approval is undoubtedly imperative. My suspicions regarding the timing of this proposition intensify, particularly as it coincides with Dad's absence from the country. Overwhelmed with emotion during our conversation, tears clouded my ability to articulate my thoughts comprehensively. Nonetheless, Rosie, my attentive confidant, offered unwavering support. With occasional back rubs and gentle encouragement, she urged me to continue sharing. Rosie, after absorbing my account, proffered her insights and counsel. Emphatically, she advised seeking Dad's input before making any decisions. She admonished me for contemplating acquiescence after the fact, highlighting the importance of Martin and Thomas respectfully requesting this favor. Addressing the absurdity of a $200 rent, she questioned the lack of clarity on shared responsibilities such as cooking, laundry, and utilities. The prospect of shouldering these burdens, especially with Martin's frequent work-related absences, raised valid concerns. Whether Martin was cognizant or oblivious to these considerations remained unclear. Rosie, in support of my perspective, pledged assistance if needed, expressing genuine understanding. Buoyed by this interaction, I resolved to discuss the matter with Dad. Martin, however, preempted my decision with a text, absolving himself of responsibility and leaving the decision to me. In response, I firmly conveyed my decision to decline. Martin, perplexed, challenged my rationale, insinuating an aversion to inconvenience. His response, devoid of coherence, aligned with Rosie's earlier assessment, a lack of genuine commitment to assuming responsibility. Realizing the need for a more substantive conversation, I determined to engage with Dad at the earliest opportunity. Martin's underlying concerns about potential conditions were evident. Even if Dad agreed, stipulations such as a curfew, household contributions, and academic diligence would likely be imposed. Given Philip's involvement in karate, weekend attendance at classes might also be required to instill discipline. Failure to meet any of these conditions could prompt Dad to insist on Philip's immediate return to his home country. Yet, in the face of potential conditions, I acknowledged that if Philip truly required this favor, my inclination was not to be perceived as heartless. The following day, I reached out to Dad as planned. Understandably uncomfortable with the notion of someone residing in his home while he was away, he refrained from granting permission. Instead, he proposed involving a real estate agent to facilitate an alternative solution. After concluding my call with Dad, Martin returned home, coincidentally with Thomas, who happened to be in town on business. Seizing the opportunity, I relayed Dad's stance, stating that we couldn't accommodate Philip, but suggested seeking the assistance of a real estate agent to find him suitable accommodation. My directness provoked fury from both Martin and Thomas, who were evidently incensed by the change in plans. They expressed frustration, asserting that their relocation plans were imminent. Martin, in a fit of anger, questioned the need to involve Dad in the decision-making process. As Mia attempted to intervene, Martin's response escalated to the point of physical aggression. In a protective gesture, I interceded, only to be met with a forceful kick to the chest. While I feigned a retaliatory punch, I never intended harm. Martin, deflecting blame, asserted that Mia's fall was solely my fault, attributing 90% of the blame to me. Expressing bewilderment at the sudden upheaval in our harmonious cohabitation, Martin left for his parents' house. Parting with a defiant declaration, he warned against characterizing him as changed or abusive, shifting blame to my actions. Despite Mia's relatively minor injuries, my chest pain persisted, prompting a hospital visit the next day. A broken rib was diagnosed, and a medical certificate was obtained. Concerned for our safety, I requested my aunt's presence and took basic security measures, installing a simple lock. Life has undergone a drastic shift, with Martin opting to commute from his parents' house. He conditions his return on my apology and convincing Dad to allow Philip to stay. However, my sentiments towards Martin have cooled considerably. I believe cohabitation could be manageable if Thomas allowed us to live separately with occasional assistance. The insistence on living together remains perplexing. I question the fragility of familial bonds and whether distant blood relations should supersede the well-being of close family ties. Despite my contemplation, answers elude me. For now, my primary focus is ensuring a safe environment for Mia. Even if Martin were to return, my concerns persist, and divorce is now a consideration. My best friend, Rosie, was correct. The idea of letting a relative, even a family member, reside in a house under my dad's name is unthinkable. I plan to seek advice from my dad again. An update 2 months later. Following heated arguments about allowing my brother-in-law's son to move in with us for college, the divorce has been finalized. After informing my dad about the details, he expressed his intention to return to the country. I had a conversation with Mia, explaining that we would no longer be living with Martin due to the divorce. Though she seemed saddened, she didn't voice any opposition. Witnessing her emotional response tightened my chest, both physically from my rib pain and emotionally from the strain. In my search for legal representation, Rosie once again proved invaluable, connecting me with a divorce attorney. Martin, since returning to his family home, maintained complete silence, ignoring my texts. When Dad and Martin finally spoke over the phone upon Dad's return, Martin insisted that the broken rib was 20% my fault and 80% mine, claiming victimhood. Resisting further inquiry, Martin asserted, "I don't owe you any explanations." When the topic of divorce arose, he was initially defiant, telling me to proceed if I wished. However, during mediation, Martin's stance softened, leading to a settlement involving compensation for the divorce, child support, and damages for the abuse towards Mia and me. In a surprising turn, Thomas reached out to apologize, and revelations about Martin's undisclosed actions came to light. Initially, Martin had promised to contribute $200 for Philip's living expenses, a detail he had withheld from me. As it turns out, Martin was in discussions with his in-laws about them providing him with approximately $800. In essence, he was attempting to siphon off funds from them, explaining his vehement insistence on having us all live together. While Martin enjoyed golfing, a seemingly expensive hobby, I believed he was managing within his personal budget. The revelation that he harbored a love for gambling, particularly horse racing, dating back to his college days, came as a shock. Neither during our dating nor after our marriage did he display any signs of this inclination. Unbeknownst to me, he had been secretly accumulating debt, amounting to around $20,000, which left me stunned. Upon learning this, Thomas understandably expressed fury, condemning Martin for taking advantage of their kindness and exhibiting far worse intentions. Thomas questioned how Martin could resort to violence and emphasized that his change in behavior likely stemmed from the fear of his debts becoming public knowledge. When Thomas confronted Martin, he proposed a solution. Martin could stay at their old house, contributing some funds for living expenses while commuting. Thomas naively trusted Martin and felt gratitude, assuming the arrangement was settled. Upon revisiting this with his wife and acquaintances, they realized the imprudence of their behavior and extended a thick envelope as a gesture of apology. Clearly, it contained apology money. However, forgiveness towards Martin was not on my agenda. Despite being unaware of these financial matters, I still harbored trust issues towards Thomas. In my view, if they had the means to prepare that much money, they should have supported their son from the outset, aiding him in becoming self-sufficient and preventing the current predicament. I politely declined Thomas's offer, and he extended his apologies once more before leaving. Several months post-divorce, Mia and I have been attending counseling twice a month. Dad's return overseas prompted occasional requests for support from my uncle and his wife, contributing to a sense of stability. However, an unexpected letter arrived from Martin. Despite my initial reluctance to open it, I sighed and decided to read it before discarding it. The letter was disconcertingly self-serving, with Martin expressing regret for losing his temper and acknowledging his financial struggles. He insinuated that honesty might have offered a solution, questioned Mia's loneliness without a father, and asserted his commitment to change for the better. The letter concluded with a suggestion to reconsider living together as a family once his debts were settled. Recognizing the self-serving nature of the letter, I shared it with my uncle and his wife. Concerned about potential risks, they promptly contacted a lawyer to arrange a restraining order. The terms stipulated that any future contact from Martin would incur a demand for $1,000 in emotional damages each time. The threat of reporting him to the police for stalking was formalized in a document sent to Martin. Though apprehensive, my uncle and his wife assured me that they would handle the situation. In an unexpected turn, my in-laws, perhaps feeling guilty, are cooperating and monitoring Martin. Seeking Thomas's assistance through the lawyer revealed that Martin is currently mentally unstable. While still employed, he occasionally mutters to himself, causing worry even to Thomas, who has facilitated his counseling. The realization that Martin had taken out loans in secret and could resort to violence brought relief for the decision to divorce. Gratefully, I can work from home without financial concerns, and Mia is gradually settling emotionally while attending school. Hoping for calm days ahead, I aim for a peaceful life moving forward. My name is Ashley. At 32, I find myself deftly managing a desk position at a modest firm while also overseeing the affairs on the domestic front. Gilbert, my husband, and I encountered each other through mutual acquaintances, and we've now celebrated 3 years of marital bliss. The initial honeymoon euphoria has dissipated, leaving behind a settled tranquility. Our day-to-day existence is predominantly stress-free and harmonious, a cocoon just for the two of us. Ashley, did you truly infuse the suplex flavor with chicken bones and vegetables? My sincere apologies, but the entrance and the bathroom were not attended to with the meticulous care they deserve, revealing an aspect of upbringing that warrants consideration. Are you paying attention? During the summer hiatus, I found myself obligated to sojourn at my in-laws, where I assumed a role akin to a servant under the scrutinizing gaze of Carolina. Each respite brought forth a litany of critiques, a ritual that seemed to accompany every significant break. I perceived it as a norm, considering the challenges encountered by friends with their own mother-in-law dynamics. Patience, I believed, would eventually quell these discordant moments. Around that juncture, Robert, Gilbert's brother, entered matrimonial bonds. Robert, a reserved gentleman in stark contrast to the more effervescent Gilbert, welcomed into his life Sarah, a youthful and modern beauty 12 years his junior. The union, albeit seemingly unconventional, filled Carolina with exuberance, heralding the first Christmas with the newlyweds. As they were occupied with work until Christmas, the plan was for Robert and Sarah to join us then. Consequently, I found myself extending my stay at the in-laws' abode from Christmas Eve onward. This decision, however, intensified Carolina's zeal to delegate tasks and oversee preparations for the impending festivities. Are you still engrossed in cleaning? At this rate, Christmas will arrive before you complete your chores. Hurry and prepare the gratin, she chided. Oh, I can hardly wait for tomorrow. She's my son's young wife, and I must acquaint her with the intricacies of our traditions, she added with evident anticipation. Observing Carolina's fervor, I sighed in silence, a sympathetic witness to the impending induction of Sarah into the fold. On the morrow, I endeavored to assist Sarah, offering empathy rather than sheer jubilation at our shared circumstance. Around noon the next day, Robert and his wife Sarah made their entrance. Despite Sarah's seemingly flamboyant demeanor, her demeanor exuded courtesy and left a favorable impression on me. In contrast, Carolina appeared preoccupied, diligently searching for any lapse on Sarah's part. First impressions, it seemed, held paramount significance. Ashley swiftly served the coffee and commenced preparations for the Christmas feast. "And you, Sarah, follow suit," Carolina directed, prompting a startled reaction from Sarah. "A son's wife belongs in the kitchen, doesn't she?" she added, guiding her son and his wife with a stern look.